You guys ever been in the middle of a situation and somebody gave you a key piece of information that was vital to understanding what was happening, and it changed the way that you were going to behave moving forward based on that new information? Like, you're like, oh, good to know, right? Maybe somebody was giving you the cold shoulder in school, and you're like, what is going on? And your friend comes along and like, oh, yeah, when you did such and such, that affected them in this way. And so they're mad at you, and you're like, oh, good to know. There's things I think we can all agree, things in life that are really good to know. There's other things that, like, who cares? Why does it matter? Right? So let's play a little game here. I'm going to put some stuff on, or give you some situations. I'm going to give you some things, and you're going to tell me if those are things that in general are just good to know, or if they're things that nobody needs to know that, right? Okay? So stand up. This side of the room is good to know. This side of the room is who cares, okay? First thing, how to change a tire. Is that good to know? Good to know over there, or who cares over here? All right. Now, ladies, I want you to pay attention to who's on the who cares side, and keep that in mind when you're picking a spouse someday and you're stranded on the road. You want somebody who knows how to change a tire. It's good to know. I'm going to say you're wrong on that one, but okay. All right. Here you go. The next one is fractions. Good to know, or who cares? All right, this is a little more divided. All right, some people are like, yeah, fractions are the worst. Who cares? Some people are like, actually, it's good to know because there's times in life you're going to need to be able to fraction things up and understand. Have you ever tried to bake? Fractions are good to know. Yeah. Okay. How about this one? Okay. Dissecting a frog. Yeah. Good to know. Oh, so it's not good to know how to change a tire, but dissecting a frog, that you can get on with? Yep. All right. Good to know about your priorities. All right. I've done it before. All right. How about, okay. Wait, yeah, are you talking about in class or just like in general you've done it? In general. Okay. Serial killer watch list. Make sure, no, I'm just kidding. All right. How about this one? Oh, here we go. CPR. Good to know, or who cares? Okay. Let me ask this question, okay? Is it good? Hey, listen. If you have an emergency happen and you're not breathing, would you like to be in a room with somebody that knows CPR? If that answer is yes, you should be over here. All right. How about this one? Just plain and simple, cutting the grass. Mowing the lawn. Good to know? Who cares? Cutting the grass. Okay. All right. Don't move in next to these people because they won't know how to keep their yard looking nice. Okay. They're just going to throw that out there. Okay. Unless you're planning on being an entrepreneur and makes tons of money and you're going to pay somebody else to do that stuff, then there's that. Or if you plan on renting and not having to keep up yards, then that's another reason you wouldn't have to know. Okay, next, this is the last one, okay? This one might be controversial. Reading or writing in cursive. Reading or writing in cursive. Like signature, cursive. Okay, so the majority of people say that's good to know. But do they teach that in your school right now? No, they dropped that, didn't they? So that's interesting. It's still good to know. You think it's good to know even if they don't teach it. Do any of you know how to do it even though they haven't taught it? Okay. Where did you learn? I just asked if they teach it at school, and you said no. Okay, yes? Last year was the last year they stopped teaching. Okay. Okay, interesting. All right, cool. All right, thank you guys. You can grab a seat. Thanks for participating. All right. So can we at least agree? I think everybody was over here for at least one of those things. I think almost everybody. So can we all agree that there are some things in life in general that are just good to know, right? There's things that everybody should know how to do. Everybody should know how to feed themselves. Everybody should know how to act in the event of an emergency. Everybody should know all kinds of things in life. There are certain things that nobody cares about, nobody needs to know. It's very specified that only a few people need to know. But there are several things that everybody would be good to know. And one of those things for me was when I was your age, and we'd be getting to the end of the semester, and we'd have one of those big tests coming up, like finals. And your teacher would be like, all right, everybody, here's your practice test. All the answers and all the questions that you're going to need to know for the test is in here. And they give that to you. And that golden piece of paper is your key to 20% of your grade. And you look at that and you go, praise the Lord in heaven for giving me all the answers that I need. Those things are good to know because those things keep your grades afloat. When the teachers give you a study guide that they say there's going to be no surprises on the test as long as you study this guide, right? Those things in life are good to know. When I was your age, those came in clutch quite a bit. And so there's things that everybody needs to know, things that are good to know. And over the next few weeks, we are going to be talking about something that is good for everybody to know because it is something that literally everybody everywhere is talking about all the time. Whether you go to school or you are around technology where there's access to the internet, or like with social media or searches online or YouTube, or if you are watching a TV show of any kind or watching movies or music that you listen to, this topic comes up everywhere. And it's good to know how to respond as Christians. In fact, this has been our philosophy on this topic for years. And it's that when it comes to this topic, because everybody else is talking about it, we as a church would be irresponsible if we also did not talk about this. Because it's important to know how to respond as Christians, how to view this topic through the lens of a Christian. And ultimately, what we want to do over the next few weeks is to give you a filter through which to process and understand and see this topic. Right? Just like on Instagram, there's filters that you can put on your images that will change the color space depending on the image. There's filters that you use to make coffee. You put the grinds in and put the water through, and it absorbs all the flavors and drips the coffee flavor through in the water, but leaves all the grinds in the top. You need a filter through which to see this topic so that on the other side, you see it through the lens of God's perspective, right? This is a topic that some people feel weird talking about. Some people get excited to talk about. Some people just feel awkward or embarrassed to talk about. But I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We're going to be talking about sexual integrity over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And this is important, again, because of how prevalent this conversation is in our culture, even at your age. And so, as a church, we wouldn't be doing our job right if we didn't talk about this way through a godly perspective. So that's what we're going to do. And 2 pitfalls that people generally fall into when it comes to this topic is they either ignore the conversation altogether, which means they allow you to figure it out all on your own and filter all the messages that you get from all the places we just mentioned a second ago, from TV, from social media, from YouTube, from music, from your school. Filter all that information on this topic and you decide what's best, right? That's the strategy for a lot of people. Just ignore it, let them figure it out. We don't want to do that to you. The second is to talk about this in a negative way, make it seem like this is a bad topic. And that's also a pitfall. That's also not good because as we're going to talk about today, God created it. And he created it for a purpose and he called it good. So we're going to talk about the filter through which we should process this topic and understand it as Jesus followers and what that means for our lives long-term and on an everyday basis starting today. And so I hope as we talk through this, we're able to talk about this in a mature, healthy, beneficial way for everybody so that we can all walk out of here feeling or in understanding God's perspective on this a little bit better. And here's what I know about this topic, and specifically with this topic amongst kids your age. I've been in this job now for 7 years, and I've had this talk with students like you for all of those years, sometimes multiple times throughout those years, sometimes not even in a message format like this, but with private conversations with your parents, with conversations on how we should have this conversation better. With this has come up so many times in the last several years. I know that there are questions that everybody has when it comes to this topic. Questions like maybe, why do we hear so many negative things about this topic? Why do we feel ashamed or embarrassed by this topic? Why does talking about this make us feel uncomfortable sometimes? What makes us curious about this topic? Is there a right way to talk about or think about this topic? And what's the big deal when it comes to this topic? All questions that have come up, and many more, as you can imagine. And so these are all great questions. Any questions you have are probably good questions because it means you're thinking about how to process this through the correct perspective. And so we're going to talk about this, and we're just going to be real about it if we're cool with that. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're not going to try to just fluff around it. We're going to talk about it in a way that is honoring to each other and honoring to God. And so first, in order to do that, we have to go back to the beginning and understand why this topic even exists in creation, why it exists for us as humans. So we're going to go back to the very beginning in Genesis chapter 1. And this is a verse we actually went over a couple weeks ago in our last series, but it's applicable for this as well. It's in Genesis 1, verse 27, and it says, God created humanity in his own image. In the divine image, God created them. Male and female, he created them. So, sex isn't actually used in this verse, but if you skip ahead to the next chapter, we see exactly where this comes into play a little bit more. In chapter 2, verses 24 through 25, it says, that is why man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife. They become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. So, a couple things I want us to take away from this. First of all, when it says they became one flesh, this is inferring some of that physical aspect. I'm going to cough just a second. Sorry about that, guys. My voice is a little shot from this weekend. So, two things to take away is one, he talks about a man and a woman being united as one flesh. Now, this infers the physical aspect of that, but that also has to do with the emotional, mental, and spiritual components of becoming one flesh as well. Everything that is yours becomes your spouse's at that point. You share bank accounts at that point. You share a roof over your head at that point. You now share family at that point. And so what's yours is theirs, and what theirs is yours. And you become as one. And that happens through the union of marriage. That happens through a man and a wife being united together. And the second part we want to take away from this is that he and his wife were without clothes and were without shame. Now, this is an important distinction because what we see as God created things at the very beginning, he created this, and when he created things in its right context and things are where they're supposed to be, it's good. And there's no shame in good. It's only after sin is introduced into the text in the next chapter, in chapter 3, when Adam and Eve eat the fruit and they sin, they disobey God, and sin enters the picture, only then do they recognize their nakedness and are ashamed. So the difference between what is good and what is shameful is when sin enters the picture. And I think why there's so much shame around this topic is because we live in a world that is broken and full of sin, which separates us from God, separates from the original design and intent about so many things, and especially when it comes to this topic. And so that introduces shame into this conversation. So in order to keep shame out of the conversation, I want to talk about why God created it and why he called it good and what it was designed for. When we keep it in that context, there's no need for shame. And so in order to live out, sexual activity, and when I talk about sexual activity, okay, let me just define the term there so that we're all on the same page. When I talk about sexual activity, I'm going to define it as pictures or physical touching of any body part covered by a bathing suit. Okay? That's the running definition we're going to go off of when I talk about sexual activity. And what we find, if we're going to reach a comprehension of this that is within God's design, we're going to call that sexual integrity. Okay, living the way that God calls us to live. And the definition of that we're going to go with is choosing to respond to the sexual desires that we feel and think or experience in a way that honors ourselves, others, and God. That's sexual integrity. When we live our lives in such a way that it is honoring to those around us, to ourselves, and to God. And it's exponentially crucial that we look through this topic through this lens. Because what this says is that whether you made mistakes before in the past, whether something was taken out of its original context by you or to you when it comes to this topic, whatever it is, you can start today to live with sexual integrity. Okay? We serve a God of second chances who loves us, who forgives us, doesn't always save us from our consequences of our actions, but we can always choose from this day forward to live with sexual integrity in a way that honors God and honors others. And so in a broken world where sin is in the picture, it's easy for us to feel like, you know what, I've already blown it. It doesn't matter. I might as well give up. No, sexual integrity says that you can choose at any point in time to start living that way. And so what I want for us to do throughout the series is to explore what it would look like if each of us started to live our lives in such a way that honored God. Because I think it would be naive of us to assume that, oh, you guys are young, you don't deal with these issues yet. And I think that's naive. I think that's foolish. And I think that we should direct your perspective on this topic towards what God says so that you can filter out all the other messages that you hear about this from everywhere else. So the goal being living with sexual integrity. So what we recognize from the very first verses is kind of what I mentioned already, that God created it, and he said that sex is good and it's powerful. Right? When sex is brought outside of the context that God originally intended, it can lead to broken relationships, hurt feelings. It can lead to all kinds of harm because it's powerful, right? And you or somebody you know has been affected by this in a negative way. That's why this topic is so sensitive, because you know of people that everybody else's lives around them were impacted because of their own discretions when it comes to this topic. Whether it was your own, maybe you've seen this with some of your friends, maybe you've seen this with family members, maybe you've seen this in my own family. Like my grandparents got divorced, and so I grew up with 3 sets of grandparents, and that was as a result of this being taken out of its original context. Okay, sex is good, and it's powerful. And when it's outside of its original context, it has the potential to create irreparable damage. But when it's within its context, it has the potential to create abundant life, for us to build families, for us to connect with each other. And so it's good and it's powerful. And that means we should probably respect the designer's intent when it comes to it and try to abide by how he set things up. Because it can, like I said, it has consequences either way. We want those consequences to be as good as possible. And so maybe you know this to be true, like I said, because you've experienced this either yourself or by people that you're close to. Or maybe you've seen that this is something that has changed the relationships of people around you. Maybe this has affected you because you have been abused or harassed when it comes to this topic, and it's left you feeling things that are, I would say, very negative when it comes to your view on this topic. And let me just pause and say that if that is you, if you have experienced this in the form of abuse or taken out of its original context, that is no shame on your part. And the temptation when it comes to sin and shame is to retreat and to hide. But what I don't want for you guys to do is to take this topic and hide all your feelings, all your struggles, everything away from it, because that is where the enemy flourishes, in the dark, in secrets, in hiding things. And so if something was done to you that is not your fault, you should find a trusted adult that you can open up to about this and talk to about this. You need biblical counseling to work through this kind of thing. Some therapy would be very helpful, and it will help you to find forgiveness. It will help you to find healing and be able to move forward. When we keep things secret, we keep things hidden, we're unable to move forward. And so if that affects you, I just want to say I'm sorry that's been your experience, and that's not the way that this was intended to be. And if you are on the receiving end of that mistreatment, you need to talk to a trusted adult. Don't hide that inside of you. So maybe that's where you're coming from. Maybe you're someone who has experimented with sex already, either through pictures that have been sent back and forth, or through a relationship that you've had, or stuff that you've looked up online. And if that's where you're at, I want to encourage you to try today to start living with sexual integrity and try to see what it's like to live according to the design that God has for this, to live with sexual integrity. I want you to know, like I mentioned before, that if you are one of the people that have already struggled with this, there's no shame in struggling, because we all have sinned. And the good thing about the cross and Jesus' sacrifice for us is that he bears our shame for us. The only way that shame has power over us is if we keep things hidden and we allow it to flourish and grow in the dark. So when we hand this over to God, when we bring it into the light, and when we strive to live with sexual integrity, that's when healing can start to happen. Because whether or not you realize it, God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for you. He wants you to be able to fulfill the plans that he has for you. He has positioned each and every one of you with certain gifts in a certain location at a certain point in time to be able to carry out his will to build the kingdom so other people can find the hope that you have in Jesus. And so whether we get everything right about this topic or not, that you're going to hear me say something that is going to sound weird. Whether you get this right or not, I care less about, compared to the importance of living out your life within the context of Christian community. Because I would rather you be open and honest with people who love and care about you, who will not judge you, but who will walk alongside you, help you to overcome your struggles, will encourage you, will help you to carry your burdens, will hold you accountable, and who will push you to be that person that God has designed for you to be. I would rather you openly struggle and be locked in with Christian community than to not have many issues, and when you do have issues, you keep it hidden, because those issues will only grow, and before you know it, you'll be hiding a monster under your bed that you cannot hide or contain any longer, and you'll have nobody to talk to about it. So I would rather you be open and honest with Christ-centered community, because with every issue in life, we are meant to live in community. And when we choose to hide parts of our lives away, that's when things start to deteriorate. And so I want you to imagine, visualize this picture for your life, where you don't have to go through things alone, where you have trusted adults that you can go to guide you, to help you, and you have friends that love and care about you and aren't going to judge you, but are going to pull you closer and closer to God as you work through your struggles, whether that's this or anything else. And so that's my goal. I want you to have good Christian community. That's why we structure our mornings around small groups, because we want you to have people that are in your corner, that know you for who you are and love and accept you, regardless of all the pitfalls, that love you for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what a safe environment is when you can be real about what's not right, and you can find wholeness in the midst of that. And that's only made possible through Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. If that didn't happen, then, even in the Old Testament, there were other sacrifices that had to be made to atone for those things. And so remember that sex is good and it is powerful. So two things I want you to do is, one, I want you to find a trusted adult that you can talk to about this. Because whether you struggle with this kind of stuff already, or whether you never even thought about this stuff before today, right? The reality is, at some point, you're going to need somebody that you can talk to. Whether that's a parent, a small group leader, a coach, a teacher, but you want somebody older and wiser than you that is a Christian that can help you walk through this stuff. So you need to find somebody that you're able to talk to about this stuff. Secondly, be brave enough to start the conversation, because this only has to be weird if you make it weird. Like I said at the beginning, everybody's already talking about this anyway. So we would be unwise to not address it straight. So be brave. Start the conversations, right? Whether you have a lot of struggles or no struggles. Let's be honest about life. And my hunch is, because I was your age, and I talked to your parents, a lot of them. I talked to a lot of students, and I know that this isn't unfamiliar territory for most of you. So be brave to just have the conversation, and recognize that you're in a safe place where you're not going to be judged. You're not going to be thought of as less than because of any of these issues. These issues have been around since long before any of you were here. I mean, you study some of the Roman culture in the New Testament, and what was going on in some of those churches, and what was going on in some of those towns. Like, none of the stuff you're going to say is going to be new or shocking. So be brave, understand that this is a safe place, and if we want to live with sexual integrity, live out the way that God designed for us to live, then that has to start with honesty. And so sex is good, it is powerful, and I want you to be thinking as you go into your small groups, who is the one person that you can talk to when it comes to this conversation? Who is one trusted person you can talk to about sexual integrity? I'm going to pray. You'll go into your small groups, and then we'll be done for the week.